Hello and welcome to Adventures in AI. If you want to get in touch with us about this episode or any other podcast, please email us at aiai@insightflow.io or find us on LinkedIn at insightflow-io or indeed Twitter, X, however modern you want it to be, at insightflow1. I'm Graham.
I'm Rich.
And we're delighted today to welcome our guest, Kim Carson, the CEO and founder of Parallax Futures. So good afternoon, good morning, Kim.
Good morning.
This is a real delight for the Insight Flow team because it's the opportunity to talk to experts and specialists around the field of AI is always exciting. And I mean, I've obviously been chatting to Kim before we're doing the record and really looking forward to chatting to you. So a little bit of an introduction to Kim. I love this piece, and I'm sorry, I am going to be faintly rude, Kim. I do apologize for this. But this runs on from a joke that we were making in the podcast a couple of months ago, that when we're talking about old and traditional in AI, we're often talking about stuff that's as old as 15 or 16 months.
Yes.
So to be joined today by somebody who's actually been in AI for a properly long time is really good and really, really cool. Kim joined IBM, the IBM Watson team in 2015 with a role that linked what the Watson team were doing to helping find opportunities in education. And you'll hear as we carry on through the podcast, there was a real focus in finding a social benefit from AI, and this thinking has stayed with her ever since. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. In 2019, Kim moved over to IBM Labs, where she had a role helping to commercialize the work done by the guys there, and it's all characterized by a focus on the big ideas and particularly deeper social and human implications of AI. And those are themes that carry on today. And now, as I said, she's the founder and CEO of Parallax Futures, a not-for-profit whose mission is to create a new breed of AI innovators called Conceptual Technologists. The purpose is to equip the fellows and the cohort with a multidimensional methodology to really define and take on the big ideas created by AI. So looking forward to this chat, Kim, and welcome to Insight Flow's Adventures in AI.
Yay. I'm excited.
Yay, absolutely. So the first thing I think I'd love to talk about is this big idea that underwrites your thinking, Kim. I'm chatting to you. I've really strongly got your belief that there's this strong possibility for really positive social change coming out of AI. And against a world where there's quite a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt about what AI is going to do and what it means, the dystopian versus the utopian.
Right.
It's so refreshing hearing you talk about these things. So just in outline, just talk about that. What sort of areas do you see social benefiting really being attained?
Yeah. So it's a great question, and I'm really glad that you asked me. I think, as you mentioned, I worked in IBM Watson, specifically on education, and I always say that was a great way to start because it actually showed me what kind of positive change could be brought about by AI very early on. And so my lens has always been like, instead of creating what I would call the Skynet of the world, right? What people are afraid of. I've always been much more interested in creating Jarvis. So if we think about Iron Man and we think about this idea of a companion that can actually expand our capabilities, we just see that there's so much positivity that can come from that. Everything from tutoring to loneliness, which I think is an epidemic that we're having, to care for our elderly, to just kind of helping guide us along the way, is something that really could, I think, uplift us as human beings, and help us to work better with one another, connect better with one another. And so there's definitely, from my viewpoint, a lot of positive that can come from this world that we're living in of AI. In addition to that, one of the, kind of reasons for creating Parallax Futures was this constant rhetoric that we were getting around the loss of jobs, right? So AI products have been really focused on efficiency, and now it can write your copy and it can code for you, and things that people go, oh no, that means I won't have a job anymore. But because of my background, I've had this kind of idea in my head about what kinds of jobs could actually be created and what are we missing, right? So it's time for us to actually step back and be reflective.
And that, I mean, that's such a lovely positive message, and I think it is necessary to be coming out with messages like that. But back to your comment about the mentor, the permanent companion. It's something that we've talked a lot about in Insight Flow and also on this podcast. There's, in fact,
Sure.
I think there's an edition from a couple of months ago of how AI can produce positive mentoring for everybody.
Yes.
And it's this really, there's this really lovely bit that in every aspect, there's this sense that mental health support around that could be gained from great AI mentoring, if that's what it is, or therapy, if
Yeah.
that's what it comes out. But but to your original stuff, I think that there's something really profound around education and the idea that every pupil has their own tailored support system going through the education process feels to me to be profoundly wonderful and
Yes.
really quite interesting. And Rich, I know, is currently working on various, at this level, relatively, I suppose, low level assistance in one sense around DEI and actually how to use AI in business, which is another one
Yes.
we're doing at the moment. And Rich, I know that you get excited by the idea of a sidekick.
Yeah, it's something that I use a lot in my personal life nowadays. If there's a skill that I want to learn, my first port of call now is to kind of download a textbook and just get that as a knowledge base that gets fed into an AI. And actually now we're starting to take that to the more professional level of okay. We have clients that do kind of leadership coaching around DEI, and actually that's a great way to be able to have this always on 24/7 coach that can actually be scaled to lots of different clients at the same time, as opposed to just being one person.
Absolutely. I love the idea of that, it's like a coach in your pocket, right? Like I love the idea of being able to travel along with something every day. And I love the idea that that it's being used for clients that are thinking about DEI. I think one of the things that I want to make sure that people understand is that I'm an old data girl, and so the data coming out is only as good as the data going in. And so a lot of folks in marginalized communities and underrepresented communities are very fearful of AI. My kind of call to action is always, you got to get in there, because if you don't get in there, then you don't get any input into the output. And so instead of getting frustrated and saying the AI doesn't really understand me or understand my culture, then I feel like, it's our duty to humanity to actually make sure that the AI is reflective of the world that we live in.
And actually, when you talk about your positioning and what have you, it's probably a good time to ask you more about how Parallax Futures fits into this and what are you doing there and what's that? How does that help us get towards these outcomes we're talking about?
Yeah, so Parallax Futures, is the result of a couple of years of work with a dear friend and philosopher around kind of AI being something that's superbly new and supremely new, right? So we think about things, in our human brains as that's a human, this is technology, and this is something of the natural world. It's biological. So kind of in these definite silos. And what I think we have in AI is a tool that actually crosses over and overflows into the categories that kind of we lift up and hold true. And I'm really interested in that overflow. I think there's really cool stuff in there. And so Parallax Futures was my attempt to bring folks that are from completely different perspectives, industries, ages, everything that you can name. We call it multidimensional diversity, and have them play in the overflow, and really as a way of a new way of innovating. So not thinking about kind of the traditional sense, which is, where's I built a hammer, let me find a nail. Like, where's the problem? Let me go find it. But really in an open space of, let me decide or let the AI help me figure out what the new possibilities actually could be. So the great thing about AI is it's like this giant brain, right? Like, it's aggregating all of this data from all of humankind. And that means there's unknown stuff. We know that we don't use all of our brain. We know that when we collaborate, there's more. And so if you think about the tool in that sense, it makes me go, oh, there's really some possibilities of things that are not problems that we're seeing today, that we're not even thinking about, or there's some discoveries to be made. And so what I do is I have a nomination-based fellowship, and so folks come to me from all of these different places, and we teach them to think about concepts in a way that they can see that the AI actually breaks with the traditional concepts. And then from there, we ask them, okay, now that you know this, what could you build to actually explore the possibilities, or what would be a great way to uplift your community, or how could you see things changing in the future? What could we actually do? And so it's a 5-month fellowship. Folks go through this kind of learning about conceptual thinking, then they explore, and then they actually get to building. And so my first cohort started in January. They're building right now. We're going to have a showcase here of their wonderful, fabulous creations here pretty soon. So I'm very excited about
that. Sounds fabulous. And can you nominate me? Can I join? Can I, please?
Yes. Well, I was going to say, so nominations come from our network, and now you are both part of our network, and so you can nominate each other. You can nominate yourselves. There's all sorts of ways to go about it.
How do you see it translating back out into practical impact? How do you see the fellows, the people who've been through the cohort, enacting what they've learned and what they've gained from going through the foundation with Parallax Futures?
Yeah, I mean, I think that much like I'm like I said, an old girl from tech, so I remember the days without having a designer on your team. My vision is for the days where you wouldn't think about creating a technology without a conceptual technologist on your team. So somebody that can really push you into new ways of thinking. And what we've seen already with fellows is they've gone off, and one fellow that I'll be talking with next week came to us from a remote country where he was the chief data officer, and actually started to create an AI that is an impartial legislator, which if you're in the United States these days, that's something that we could actually use. So thinking about how we might actually take away our bias by leveraging the data that's available to us to actually make decisions on behalf of the collective. I love that idea. So there are ideas like that. There's also a fellow that I have right now who's working in the space of sound and kind of spatial audio, and he's really interested in how we can go back to almost our ancestral times, where music and the things that we created were ways of actually touching us in a very deep way. And so he has actually been starting to talk to Calm about how we might be using AI and AI models around sound in order to deepen your meditation practice or your wellness practice. And so really it's limitless, right? Like the possibilities of things things that might come out of these fellows is limitless. And so my goal is just to hold the container for them to do this kind of crazy experimentation. I always say the kids are smarter than me. And so, my goal is to just hold the container for them and allow them to really experiment and then to put them out in the world and see what they might.
I mean, fabulous. And as you're going through this, I mean, when we were preparing for this and chatting, you were talking about the move from, and you've mentioned it already, this move from sort of siloed ways of thinking and siloed functions into and looking for the overlaps, and you've talked about that already. In business terms, do you see this as something that business is going to have to substantially change to be able to take on the big ideas of AI? Do you see their structures changing and their processes changing?
Yeah, I mean, I still think even in today's world of like innovation consulting, we're still fairly siloed. There are technical folks and there are creative folks, and sometimes you put them together in the room, but oftentimes they don't like each other when you do that. And my kind of revelation or aha is that we all have that in us, right? There's a creative aspect to everyone. There is a technical aspect to everyone. And when we have tools like we do that can build for us, then it really democratizes and levels the playing field. We say that, the hottest new programming language is English. If the hottest new programming language is English, then what does that do for our ability to create and tap into new types of creativity? And instead of worrying about AI as taking over that creativity, what if we leverage it as a guide? What kinds of new spaces and fields of possibility can we actually be led into? And I think business will have to go that way. There will have to be less of, hey, we're the marketing team, hey, we're the dev team, hey, we're this team, and really this overlap of how we think about bigger global issues together, how we innovate together in the space that we work together in, with a real view of how does this help us globally?
Yeah.
How does this help our humanity? How does this uplift us? And so I think that will be a big change.
I mean, Rich and I are, and I think you are from management consultancy backgrounds, and of course,
Yes.
this whole conceptual stuff that you're talking about is really fascinating. This idea that management consultants, I think, when they're doing a good job, are thinking about possibilities and
Absolutely.
change.
Absolutely.
And it feels to me that there's this idea of possibilities around what businesses can be. I mean, I do think there's a really interesting bit there that there's a risk that AI is a side project, that businesses are so busy, that people in businesses are so busy doing their day job that they will struggle to think about AI in the right way. And
Yes.
that possibly actually more broadly true, actually, that it's not just people in business, it's people, period,
Yes.
who are just too busy in their day life to be able to insert AI into it in sensible ways, or to exploit the possibilities. I mean,
Yes.
it's quite interesting. Rich is in many ways is actually using AI on a day-to-day basis, certainly way more than he was a year ago.
Yes.
Yeah, I joke about it, but I actually talk to AI more than I talk to Graham. So definitely on a day-to-day basis. And I get a lot of people come and ask me, like, oh, how can I start to use AI to help me doing what I'm doing? And my first response is always, well, what are you doing? Because there's almost certainly some aspect of AI that can help what you're doing. So you need to think about it not as this kind of, as you've described, this like different siloed area of tech. It's actually this comes together into what you're actually doing in your day job, and there are many different aspects of it that you can start to integrate.
Yes, absolutely. I think that I love that you're using AI in such different ways. But I was talking to a friend the other day, and we were likening this to the beginning of the internet. As I was just saying that we were likening it to the beginning of the internet, right? Where it was like, at first businesses were like, I don't need that. I don't need to have a web presence. I don't need to be online. I don't need to, and then all of a sudden it was like, bam, you can't do business without having a web presence, without being online. And I think AI is moving similarly in that same direction.
There was an absolutely brilliant IBM ad from about 98-ish, which had two guys in an American cafe. One was reading a paper, sitting on opposite sides of a table. One was reading a paper and both drinking coffee. And the guy reading the paper says here, we need to be online. And his mate looks at him and says, why? And he reads a bit more and says, doesn't say. And it was just a lovely IBM ad, which, the obvious, outcome was talk to IBM and we'll tell you why.
Right.
But it is absolutely like the beginning of digital in this idea that the possibilities are huge, and this recognition that there's going to be change, and it possibly is like the beginning of digital, where this idea that said that about half of what you think is possible is really difficult and will never happen,
right?
And half of what you think is really difficult is really easy and will happen before you can possibly imagine it, and that those two parallel streams will sort of then structure policy and strategy and what have you for the next 10 or 15 years.
Absolutely.
And it feels to me that we're at that point in AI that and there's probably quite a lot of lessons to be learned, or I passionately believe there are a lot of lessons to be learned from how we did digital through the sort of late 90s and into the early 2000s, and what the way that we might be looking at approaching AI.
Yes, agreed. I think you're right on, Graham.
We're even kind of to I guess a much smaller degree, but kind of getting that replication of the .com bubble as well. If you think of stocks like Nvidia, just in the last few months have skyrocketed, and a large part of that is based on the things that they're doing in AI.
Absolutely. There was actually a great article that I read today that was talking about the solving of hallucinations and of AI hallucinations. And I was thinking, well, what are hallucinations? I mean, we dream, we daydream, we have dreams, we think about things. And so, who's to say that we're not being kind of exposed a little bit to what's going on in the AI in a way that's really uniquely new. And so it was just interesting to me to think, why do we need to solve
I think a kind of a unique way to think of hallucinations is actually it's the AI being creative, because if you think about how AIs are trained on historical data, and there's always that fear that actually can it come up with new things. Well, that's what a hallucination is.
Yes, exactly.
Except when it's really weird and completely wrong.
Then we would call it art.
That's probably my favorite example of that was I was starting to use AI to produce content about Insight Flow and Team Boost and Adventures in AI, and I put in all the documents we had and got it to look at all these things, and it was doing really well, describing us and writing great marketing content about Insight Flow. And then it suddenly decided that we had a product that we just didn't. It invented a product.
Maybe it was trying to tell you something, Graham.
Well, the problem, absolutely. And the problem there, if it is a problem, was it was a really good idea, and the fact that we did, it was completely plausible, but we just didn't have anything called that. And it was starting to write press releases about this product that we didn't have. We probably should have done, but so it is. So there is definitely a bit there of the creativity and art and actually challenging the world in doing things that aren't there. I mean, we always talk about the fact that AI is something that you should, in many ways, treat as a human. Both from the very beginning, that it comes into your organization at the level of a good intern, and 3 or 4 years later is the level of a good senior manager. And that you need to do for AI all the things that you need to do for a human, which is brief them
Right.
properly and give them the right documents and guide them and tell them when they've gone slightly wrong and all the rest of it. So it's a fascinating background of thinking about this, and to your sort of core theme, this idea that it's completely different, it's a new thing, and it's not technology. This I think is something that's really important from what you're saying. One of the other areas, things I wanted to chat to you about, Kim, was when we were chatting before the podcast, you were talking a lot about service design and the ideas of service design going through into what you do and say, both as a person and as an organization in Parallax Futures. Just talk a little bit about why you think service design is so important in the mix and in this conversation about AI.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the idea of the silos, right, Graham? So thinking about how we have structured kind of user-centric design today is we're looking for like problems maybe that the person, the customer we're trying to serve already has. And so it's not for me the best way to innovate within the field of AI, because there's so many possibilities that I can't even think of, right? We're talking about this immense power, this immense, all of human history or whatever we've trained the model on. Then there might be things that I'm not actually thinking about. And so in this case, it's not the customer is always right. And so I think that there needs to definitely be, there's still a respect for the customer. We still want to make sure that the design of the things that we do have some humanity to them. But I do think that there's much more space to be innovative than what the current frameworks actually provide. And so one of the things that I'm writing right now is a series of blogs that are about, it's called Beyond Design Thinking, right? So thinking beyond, what's the next kind of innovation framework? What's the next kind of way that we can actually incorporate AI and the things that it can do that we cannot do into how we service our clients and our customers. And that's something that I don't think enough people are actually thinking about. And so they're thinking about, how do we make the AI more human? And I'm thinking about, no, the AI is not human. It's something in and of itself. So how do we leverage it to actually help us with humans? Which is a different way of thinking about things. It's a different lens. And so this is something that keeps me up at night. These are the things that I think about in the shower.
But at the moment, one of the great answers to those types of questions is ask AI, and actually ask AI in those terms.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, so a great friend of mine who owns an AI company had talked about teaching his staff to use the AI, and then he reviewed how they prompted the AI, and he learned so much, because one of his people, I never even thought about this. This blew my mind. One of his people, when the AI would perform and give an answer back after it had been prompted, he would ask the AI, how did you come up with that answer? So very simple, but a way for him to start to dive deeply into almost the mindset of the AI. Like, where did you get this from? So going back to your, it created a product from you. Maybe you should have asked it, like, why did you create this product? What were you thinking about that, or what were you leveraging that I'm not thinking about that made you think that we should have a product? And this is the way that the product was going to go. So I just think there's so many ways that we can dive deeper into how we interface with the AI and understand where it's coming from, that can really help us with our clients, with our businesses, with our customers, that I really want people to start to think about in a deeper way, because I really think it will change things for the better.
You're the great prompt person. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I quite enjoy kind of almost hacking or light version of AI as well, and trying to figure out what prompts people have used and that, and you can start to get an idea of how it's working, and AI has always been really good, I found, at laying things out for you in terms of like kind of planning things and organizing things. So you're absolutely right. If you do start to probe it with questions as to actually how did you come up with this, it's actually usually very good at providing an answer and giving you a hell of a lot of insight as well.
Yes. Prompting you to, it prompts you to ask more questions about how you come up with your own answers sometimes, or how you even came up with the prompt to begin with, which is very interesting.
Yeah. And if you think actually about some of a more advanced AI in terms of an agent, in terms of what an agent's doing. So when you're asking a question to an AI agent instead of just an AI model, what that agent's actually doing is it's planning, and it's going back and forth with itself to
Yes.
get the correct answer for you. And it's actually really useful to be able to kind of eavesdrop on that conversation if you can.
Right.
I mean, one of the things I'm thinking about as we're going through this, and again, putting it in a business context, and I know that you generally talk in a broader, more social context, Kim, but just in a business context, and possibly sort of following on a little bit from the it's like digital conversation. I mean, for me, one of
Yes.
the really interesting questions that needs to be answered sooner rather than later is who is responsible for AI in an organization. And if you start to think about all the things you've talked about, this idea that it's overlapping silos, that it's for humans across the board, that starts to become quite a difficult question to answer immediately, I think.
Yes, I think it does. It is. And I've seen, the emergence of kind of chief AI officers, and in organizations. And that to me is a completely concrete example of jobs that are being created versus jobs that are being taken away. Just as we have HR representatives that are responsible for the humans, there probably should be something that's responsible for the AI at the business level, right? And so all of the things you were saying earlier make a lot of sense. The onboarding, the kind of pulling the AI into the culture, making sure that we're being responsible with how we use it, and that we're using it for the betterment of our business, really need to fall to someone. And maybe that person doesn't exactly exist yet. And so, we're championing a new kind of role in an organization of someone who can be responsible and can be thinking about these things in a different way.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about kind of AI as being a kind of great equalizer in terms of giving technical abilities to maybe more non-technical staff. I think you're absolutely right in terms of new job creation, and also how does the tech department have to change? And I think they have to become, it's almost more consultative with their own company, of understanding roles and exactly what people are doing on a day-to-day basis as to where AI can be inserted to help their staff.
Absolutely.
This presumably is another way of describing your conceptual technologist concept. This conceptual technologist concept.
Yeah, conceptual tech. I love that. I conceptualized the conceptual technologist. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Okay, but I mean, that feels entirely plausible and really profoundly useful to me. This idea that says that this is the person who's joining dots across the organization or
Absolutely.
across society,
Absolutely.
but also responsible for asking what if,
Yep.
or perhaps even more ambitious questions than that,
Yes.
in an organization. Do you, I mean, sorry, just as we go back to that, and we've sort of cycled back slightly to an earlier part of the conversation, but I think it's really interesting at this stage. Would you see Parallax Futures moving forward into providing support for people in organizations who are starting to try and pick up those types of roles, or even
Absolutely.
training, so even more pragmatic stuff?
Absolutely. I mean, we have a pretty audacious goal to create a community of about 3,000 conceptual technologists in the next couple of years. And, part of what I was saying earlier is I feel like it's my job to hold that container, right? So already we have a platform where conceptual technologists have been named. We have honorary conceptual technologists. We will be training even more people. I think, as you were saying earlier, management consultants are a great place to start, right? Because they're already kind of doing this what if management consulting, kind of innovation consulting, and inviting them into the community where they have a thought space and they have people that they can actually talk to. Hey, this is working in my organization, but I'm having problems here. How might I do that? In our post kind of Corona world, I think there's a real call to community, from a social perspective, but also from a business perspective, where we want to re-engage with one another on a human to human level. And so providing a frame where people can do that is a really big part of Parallax Futures. So not just creating these conceptual technologists, but actually providing a space for them to nurture and be able to be thought partners with one another wherever they are.
So it's probably worth me putting in at this point. If anybody is listening to this and is interested in finding out about this, it's parallaxfutures.org, but we'll stick it into the description as we go through, because I suspect I can think of loads of people who would either be part of the program or be really interested in the outcome of the program, and I think it would be really nice to get some of them involved, or at least point them in the direction of you guys. So that's all incredibly positive, but there's barriers. There's things that are not working out as well. So what in the short medium term, where do you see the barriers for this working out the way that you're describing?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest barriers, and we may have talked about it a little earlier, is fear, right? So one of the biggest barriers to how we advance AI is the fear of AI, and so that keeps a lot of people out of it. And if we think about it as the way to reflect our humanness, and actually help us be better at our humanness, then all humans have to be in the pool, right? We all have to be at the party, or else we won't be able to do that effectively. And so fear has been my biggest barrier, particularly with marginalized communities. And I'm a person that does not want anybody left behind. And so how to overcome those fears is something that I struggle with every day, is how to go into communities and be like, nope, it's okay. Go ahead and play with this technology. Go ahead and play with this tool. It's not going to steal all of your data. It's not going to take over the world. It's a really hard thing to convey and get people to on board with, for sure.
Yeah, I think interestingly, it's a fear that very often goes away quickly as soon as somebody starts to use it and sees the kind of things that it can do with it. And even just as we were chatting before we started this podcast, I was telling you I'm not a coder, but the last 2 weeks I've done coding, and that's a perfect example of extending my skill set and doing things that I couldn't do before. So I certainly think if you can get past that fear and start to use it and see AI as what it is, really an enabler and an expander of your skills, then that fear does start to go. But I think you're right. It's that getting people past that first step that's often the hardest.
Yes, absolutely. And so there are, new LLMs that are coming to market that are trained on specific communities and cultures. And so my hope is that maybe some of them will be really helpful to get people over their fear. Like, if you are worried about diversity, for example, then maybe Chat Black GPT or the Latimer AI LLM that it's coming out will be something that you'll be less afraid to actually interact with. So all positivity from that.
It is interesting, isn't it? This sense of the fear of the unknown. Now, I mean, it is perfectly possible, and I think you can see evidence of it to suggest where AI can be used badly. I mean, one of our common themes throughout the podcast and in all our talking is the risk of bad actors. So we were talking 3 or 4 weeks ago about whether AI is going to steal elections.
Yes.
And yeah,
we have some evidence that maybe there has already been some of that.
Well,
yes.
Yeah, I mean, and starting at the easy bit of deep fake and
yes.
the stuff. Now, I maintain in this one, I have a constant theme in this one, that any new media form is used equally well and equally badly by bad actors. That we kind of get immune to it. This idea that from sort of 20 years ago, that photographs could be photoshopped.
Yes.
There was a brief window where people were seeing photographs and believing them.
Yes.
And then suddenly people went, actually, do you know what? It's probably photoshopped.
Yes.
And I perhaps slightly optimistically, I believe that in the AI stuff is we'll see something and go, not sure about that. It's probably a deep fake.
Yes.
At some point. So there's a narrow. Unfortunately, as far as elections concerned, 2024 is going to be a really big year for elections around the world, and it's sort of probably inside that window where people don't look at stuff and go, is that deep faked or not? And they don't have that kind of immunity to it.
Yeah, and this actually plays into the earlier comments around fear, right? Is like, I often tell my kids when they're worried about bad actors, I say, but there's more of us than there are of them. And so the more of us that we can get, involved, then the better chance we have at combating the bad actors, right? And so we need to get more good actors involved, right, from the get-go.
Yeah, and so where do you see the balance of responsibility, actually, if we're thinking about ethical AI, between the AI developers like OpenAI and Google, I guess, government or legislation, and then ultimately us as end users as well, the ones that are kind of using it?
Yeah, I think that there's this is speaks a lot to my hope that AI is a reflection of our humanity. So I think one of the struggles that we're having around ethics is that there are no norms, right? And so, ethics implies that there are norms that we all agree to, but I don't remember signing anything that says that I agreed to the norms that you agree to. And we haven't had these discussions. We should be having these discussions. I think that's actually where the big AI companies could be more helpful, is like, instead of just saying, hey, we're going to do this responsibly, hey, ethical AI, let's put a stamp on it and a brand on it and make it all good. It's like, let's facilitate the conversations that say, what should be the standards? What are the things that we can agree on? And how do we help with that facilitation? They have so much reach and so much kind of power in that reach that I feel like somebody should be talking about this, so that it's not just like implied. It's implied that we all know the difference between good AI and bad AI. We don't. We haven't had the conversation, so let's have the conversation.
And again, is that the type of conversation that you expect your cohorts going through Parallax Futures to be engaged in, or to trigger, or to?
Yeah, we have this conversation all the time. It's interesting, Graham, that you're talking about Photoshop, because we have one senior fellow who's working on computational imagery and the idea that you can manipulate pixel by pixel, right, in this AI age. And we're going, well, that's really kind of scary. But at the same time, if we go back in time, back to ancient times, when all we had was people that were doing art, we were seeing things from their perspective. So how is that different? Like, how I see Graham and Rich may be different than how a different person that's drawing you sees Graham and Rich. And so what's the truth here? Like, this is really the thing that we need to start to talk about, is like, what's really true. And then maybe we can decide how we're going to treat these images, and how we're going to treat these fakes, and how we're going to treat these the kind of things that are coming, that are scaring us, that are coming out. But this is not new, from my standpoint, right?
You've definitely been hanging around with philosophers too much. I mean, and I say that
Too
as a
much.
philosopher, and I do say that as a philosophy graduate. So I am absolutely recognising
You knew I liked
these conversations.
you.
But you're right. It is so important, and this idea of there not being a black and white view of right and wrong. It's not binary. So it's a
Yes.
lot of it's contextual, and a lot of it
Yes.
is something that is about active decision making. This idea that we innately know in every instance of something that's absolutely right and absolutely wrong, and can absolutely
Yes.
make that decision. I think it is completely wrong.
Yes.
And
Like if we're training models to think that way, oh my goodness, that's never going to work for anybody.
absolutely, and then to your question, Rich, I think there's equally no given answer. There is nobody who is singularly responsible for making sure that good AI trumps over bad AI, or that
Right.
good actors trump over bad actors.
Right. It's got to be a collective, and it's got to be a collective conversation.
Do you see, I mean, with the work that you and the foundation are doing, do you see growing engagement? But certainly within the AI community. But are you starting to have conversations into the politicians or the lawmakers or other societal groups?
Yeah, just this morning, I was I proposed a session to the UN's WSIS, which is a part of their ITU council, and we'll be talking about conceptual technology. I'm really pleased to say at the end of May, and so yes, I'm by training, I think, kind of an audacious person, and so I really don't think that there's any where that this doesn't touch. Just like there's nowhere that AI doesn't touch in terms of industry. There's nowhere that thinking about conceptual technology, thinking about these underlying norms and things that we want to do in order to make things ethical and good versus not good. There's nowhere that shouldn't be discussed. And so definitely already kind of moving into the sphere of where we take this globally. That's the next thing on the agenda for sure.
Well, and in fact, that leads into sort of a sensible final-ish question of where do you see Parallax Futures going? I mean, what is your ambition for your organization over the next 2, 5, 10 years or whatever?
Yes. I really see, that Parallax Futures, is able to, it becomes a common thing, that it's somewhere that you want to send people, whether that's in person or remotely, in order to have the space to do this kind of conceptual thinking. In the immediate term, I definitely am after those 3,000 conceptual technologists, so I'm going to get those. But I think going forward, it's really about expanding this into every aspect of what we do. So I think about the kind of way that design thinking took over the world was not a new concept, but yet all it took was one kind of institution to make it kind of permeate all of what we do. And Parallax Futures is going to be that for me, for sure.
That's fantastic. So thank you so much for your time. It's been absolutely lovely speaking to you, and very exciting hearing about what you're talking about. But I very much hope that we can get you back on at some point in the near future, either to talk in some of the detail of what your cohort's done or doing and talking about, but also to just find out how you're getting on. This has been fantastic. It's been absolutely lovely speaking with you, Kim, and really, really interesting sets of things that you're talking about. I wish you the best of luck and all the fellows the best of luck.
Thank you so much, Graham. Rich, this has been a great conversation. So much fun. I really appreciate it. And I thank you for inviting me on.
Well, you're very welcome. So that's it for this episode. I've been Graham.
And I've been Rich.
And thank you very much, Kim Carson, CEO of Parallax Futures.
Thank you.